how many times in your career was I with you after
very many.
after celebrating something that had happened on the racetrack with you?
Maybe never.
Right. So this was an occasion.
Except for that time I gave you a ride home from Darlington and Katie made you sit in the back seat of the Mustang.
What happened?
I don't know.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I was getting ready to leave the racetrack, and you walked up. You're like, "Hey, man, I need a ride home." I was like, "Okay, jump in." You remember that?
No.
Yeah.
Was it after the race?
Yeah, I kind of felt bad for you because it was after the race. I drove you all the way home.
Hitchhiker.
Doesn't remember this? No, I felt bad for him because it might have been maybe our first year in Cup, maybe. Oh no, it wasn't. It was at least 2002 actually, and because I remember the car I was driving. And we stopped at this, I don't remember what restaurant it was. I know you got all these sponsors, so I'll probably have to tell you it was a Bojangles or something. But I don't think it was, but it was something like that. It was a fast food restaurant. We got out, we went in to order, and you got mugged by so many people were bothering you that we had to go in a car, go through the drive-thru.
No,
like we order. It was terrible. I was like, man, as much as everybody thinks it'd be cool to be Dale Jr., this sucks right now. I can't even order a sandwich.
Yeah. I don't remember.
You don't remember any of that, do you? That's crazy.
That was 22 years ago.
Yeah, I remember it perfectly.
Well, I remember we were at a restaurant. You had won, I think it was your Cup championship because, or a race or something. We had planned to go do this, and you asked me to come along, and Ross was there, and he was a kid.
Yeah.
I remember when he won his first race, big race, I guess, and you showed me a picture on your phone of him sleeping with his trophy.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this is crazy. Because, me and Matt kind of came up together, and I always felt like we were sort of the same age, even though we might be a little bit different. But he had this son. He had this whole other, part of him that was like I was immature as hell. I didn't have any kids, and I don't know. I felt it was interesting that we became friends like we did because you had things that had happened in your life that had matured you, right? And you still
Still working on that maturity part.
Yeah, I don't know. You're pretty mature when you came onto the scene. Do you remember the first time we met?
I don't.
Yeah.
The very first time we met.
I think we were at one of the races
that.
in 97.
That'd be
You were driving the
97,
Kraft
yeah.
singles car.
Yeah.
I remember going to Nashville. We talked about this with Robbie. I remember going to Nashville and you running really well. That was like the race where you ran top 10 all day, and I was like, dang, that's pretty good because that car they'd struggled with that car. And then we start the next season. We go to Daytona. Y'all don't have a sponsor, and y'all go to Rockingham and get Lycos on the car, and you win the race. And it's so funny to talk to you because you probably see this completely different, but in my mind, you went from, man, this guy might be worth kind of paying attention to. They might have a couple good runs this year, to firmly on the map. Like the way you moved Tony Stewart out of the way, and
I never even touched him.
Well, the way he moved out of the way, so conveniently.
Tony Stewart moves himself out of the way. Yeah.
The way that went down, right? Everybody was like, "Oh!" And from that moment on, you became. You were entrenched into the series. You probably still felt like you were working your guts out just to make it, but what that race did for you, I don't know that it can be put into words.
Yeah, for sure. So to go back to 97 Nashville, we went there. It was my first race with Robbie. And the guys, I was supposed to race a late model up in Wisconsin. I told Jerry Gunderman I was going to race his ASA car all year. And then when Robbie offered me that car, I quit. I moved down there and took it. And I had several people who I kind of trusted told me I was dumb and the car wasn't running good and I needed to stay up and win races in ASA. But I also knew I wasn't getting any younger, and I seen a lot of younger guys having success, like Elliott Sadler, people like that. And I just didn't think I was ever going to get a chance if I didn't do it. So really went down there without any promise or guarantee of anything besides going to run Nashville. And we qualified third. Robbie and I right away, right after our first practice, I knew it was going to work really well together between the both of us, because I used to do most of my own stuff in my late model cars. I'd build my own shocks, set my own cars up, build my stuff. I'd do all that. But then down here is different because I was a crew chief, right? And the first crew chief, when I ran my first push race, was like everything I would tell him. It's just like, well, that's not the way it works in these cars. No, that's not what you're feeling. No, that doesn't make any sense. Like it was really bad. And I was like, ugh. And when I started working with Robbie, it was the opposite because he came out of the driver's seat, so he understood both sides of it. And he'd listen to what you'd say, and then he'd tell you his experience. We could kind of work together. It worked really well. So we did run well that day. We were actually run third or fourth, and Jeff Purvis spun me out, and we didn't hit anything, and we came back and finished 11th, I think it was, or something. So, but yeah, fast forward back to Rockingham. I mean, that was the biggest win of my career, by far.
Yeah.
And, one of the most memorable races and days that I've ever had in racing. Like nothing could ever top that or replace it, honestly. So, we, like I said, we didn't have a sponsor. We didn't know if we were going to keep racing. A couple other people that would call and want me to race. I'm like, no, I told these guys I was doing it. We're going to do it. I'm not going to mention them.
Oh, come on.
Be like Robbie. No, Robbie didn't tell you either. Some of those.
Were they other Busch teams?
Yeah, it was actually your dad. He wanted to replace him. He wanted to replace it with somebody a little more experienced, and I was like, I can't do that to Dale Jr. I didn't ever want to tell you that. Sorry to break it to you on the show.
He's diverting.
And
we'll just start naming some
what is it
people
going to
and
do? Piss Robbie off?
No, I don't know.
Why can't you name them?
Well, just they had other drivers and stuff. It's just
it's like
yeah.
It's
So
like
anyway,
20-some years ago.
So
It's more than that. It's 26 years
So
ago.
we went and ran that race. Weren't sure if we're gonna have a sponsor, and then Mark Martin was helping us at the time. Roush was helping us at the time, kind of like Robbie. All covered all that, and but they didn't. But Risers paid for it all, and to be able to win that race was just. I mean, it was an awesome race. It was really, really cool. It was just, you remember at Rockingham how you could grab that line in 3 and 4, and if you hit it just right on the left sides, it would like
yank
the car
you
would do
around,
that,
yeah.
and you could run. The whole car doesn't have any power, right? And as soon as it yanked like that, you could floor it.
Yeah.
And if you missed it was like 2/10 slower. Well, we went in 3 that last lap, and like somebody that doesn't race probably wouldn't really see it, but Tony missed it by about 4 inches, and when he missed it, he didn't really get way off the line, but he wasn't like sucked down to the line. And my left front hit it, and the car did that. And as soon as it did that, I just floored it. And he was like that far off the bottom, and the air got just to his left. And I was just barely moving toward him, and it just started moving his car up. And I was able to pass him the line, which still don't know how that ever happened. Really wasn't expecting that, but yeah, that was a great race.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Why do you think me and you became pals that first year?
Maybe felt bad for me. I don't know. I mean,
who instigated the first conversation?
Most likely me, because the only person I ever met that is more shy than me is you.
Yeah,
I
was massively shy back then.
Yeah, and me too. And so I think we had that in common, and I think both starting at the same year, I kind of understood for whatever reason. In a way, I don't think anybody can ever totally understand it if they're not in your shoes, but the massive amounts of like pressure you were under and scrutiny and people looking at everything you did and said and how you drove and like all that stuff.
Did you like Dad? You were a Dale Earnhardt fan, weren't you?
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. And I thought that was like a good end for me to like, hey man, I could talk to this guy. He likes my dad. He thinks dad's cool. So
I only have a couple funny memories about your dad and you, in your racing. Well, I have several because I'd kind of always be by you, especially like our rookie year, right?
Yeah.
He'd come walking up and tell you stuff, or even in the Busch Series or whatever. But man, he's tough on you. Do you remember that night after qualifying in Atlanta? We were gonna go do that QVC show and we went to your dad's motorhome.
Nope.
Do you remember that?
Nope.
Oh, we got to hear this. Go ahead.
I remember that. I felt bad for that day. So we walk in the motorhome, and the thing not that I really knew your dad that well, but you've said a million times how I always commanded the room, right? Like he told everybody where to sit, what they were going to eat, what they were going to, like, tell you, right? Like the whole thing. Like so you walk in, you start taking your shoes off, leave your shoes on, carpet's the cheapest thing in my motorhome, sit down over there, I tell you all that, And we were on the pole at Atlanta, and that was with the Busch cars, and you could run wide open most of the time. And he's like, man, good job on pole. I was like, oh, thanks. And he's like, did you run wide open? And I was like, yeah, I was able to make it around there wide open. He's like, Dale Jr., did you run wide open? And he looks at you and you start doing that, and you start doing that. And I was like, oh, that's his tell right there. I mean, he's like, well, yeah. I mean, it's kind of, yeah, pretty much. He's like, well, did you run wide open or not? And you're like, yeah, I mean, you're doing all that stuff that you do. And And he stops you and he looks right at you. He goes, did you run wide open or not? And you're like, well, no, I didn't quite make it through one and two wide open. Well, that's why now you're not on a pole. And he started chewing your butt about
Good
not. That's
grief.
why you weren't on a pole because you couldn't hold it wide open or whatever. And I was like, all right, how about those Packers?
Yeah.
Change the subject
It's
real
pretty
quick.
awkward.
It was funny, though.
Yeah.
Man.
QVC, we were talking about that.
Yeah, we went on that because we were doing that QVC show that night or something, and somehow you guys got me where I could go on there with you guys or something.
Yeah.
I can't remember. It was a long
Those
time
were
ago.
some
That was probably
strange-
98,
Yeah.
maybe 99. Might have been 99. I don't know.
It feels awkward. I mean, like knowing how awkward. I mean, you never really loved doing QVCs to begin with, but then knowing it,
I got my ass
you're
chewed
like-
right before we went on one.
and now you get chewed
You
right
weren't
before.
really chewing it that bad, but
Yeah.
it was kind of funny.
He made
'cause-
me, made me want to wish I'd run wide open.
Yeah, yeah. Like, man, I should have held the wide open and wrecked. I mean,
Right? Who knows?
yeah. I noticed you didn't say, well, if you'd have gave me a better car, I could have.
Oh.
You didn't say that.
Oh, yeah.
No, I don't think that would have been.
I knew
thing.
that was a sorry ass excuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, all right, you have a couple of Dale Earnhardt stories. That's a good one. What else? Like, when
That's
did
the
you-
one I'm telling
Oh, but do you know of some? I mean, do you remember some Dale
No,
Earnhardt
that's it.
stuff? What? You're not telling the truth.
I don't know. That was just the one I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Do you remember when the first time you met him?
You know, yeah, I think. No, I'll just say no. I feel like the first time I met him was probably at Dover when I drove Bill's car in the drivers meeting. It was probably there. It was either at that one or it was the next one I ran into Roush's car. But I remember he came and sought me out because that was one of our only wrecks that we had together. I told you
That was that
story.
weekend.
No, I won the Busch race that weekend when I drove Bill's car.
So it was a
It was a
earlier
different.
week.
It was a different race, but I must have been running the Cup race the next day because I remember him seeking me out at the drivers' meeting and did his whole arm around me thing, and he would never do that intentional. That was like laying all.
We
up,
wrecked
yeah.
somewhere else besides
No, it was Dover.
Dover?
Yeah, so it was the next day I was running the Cup race. He saw the next day at the drivers' meeting.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
the infamous Dover story.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was funny. He came and put his arm around me and was.
Yeah. We've talked about that one.
Yeah.
That Matt had the best car. We had a restart somehow or another. I'm on the inside, and I'm like, man, I'm going to try to pass him. And we ran side by side for like 3 corners, and I finally busted my
Yeah, that's
I'll tell you, those cars
I was
were
out of control.
I mean, all the people that don't do it anymore, the older guys probably all think that their generation and stuff was like not the best or whatever. But those cars were really fun to drive. So
They
you
were
could still pass.
So fun.
There was no really aero deficiency behind somebody. It almost hurt the guy in front of you
Yeah.
when you could pull up to him. Bumpers didn't line up
Yeah.
if you need to move somebody.
You
They were
remember-
really, and you could drive them so hard. Remember how hard you drive those things at Dover? You
Yeah.
drive them so hard, and it was.
You
fun.
remember at places like Michigan and Charlotte, the lead car would get loose.
Yeah.
And we would often, there were a couple races where it's like, no, you lead, you
Yeah.
lead.
Yeah.
No, you lead, you
Yeah.
lead. I'll run a
Yeah.
couple laps up front. No, I'm too loose, you lead.
Yeah. You race super hard to go get that 5 points for that lap led. And then if you weren't good enough to hang on, you're like, I'm going to slow down. And you get behind them and start building
Yeah.
the right front for a while, right? And get tighter and then try to pass them back. And
Yeah. It was bad.
There's
I
none of that these days. People used to wave you by. Yeah,
Yeah.
Come on, I'll get you back later. None of
Even the
that.
Cup car
Yeah.
in 2000 didn't drive like that.
Yeah.
Don't you remember? Did you think the Cup car was similar to the Busch car back then? I mean, it wasn't too far off, but it didn't have that tendency
Yeah.
to the aero balance leading versus following was quite different, I thought, in the Cup car.
Yeah.
A little more aero issues. And I remember going to they had that 5 and 5 rule.
Yeah.
That sucked. They got a 5-inch front valence.
Yeah.
They
Did we
wouldn't
ever
turn
race?
for
It was like in 98 when they came
I
up with that.
ran
don't
it at the
remember if I raced
Motegi.
that. At where?
At the Japan race. And it was awful. And I was like, oh, Cup sucks. This thing gonna be no fun. The Busch car is way more fun than this.
Yeah.
Were you really pissed off about that, Rick? Because you're going to win the race. You were.
I mean,
Come on.
not that bad. Because, I mean,
It didn't ruin our friendship.
yeah, no, I mean, I've been mad about wrecks, obviously. But not really, because really, I knew in my heart that it was just an accident. I mean, you're still mad when you get taken out because you only get a chance to win so many races. Even when you're young, you still know that it's a finite amount. You're not going to race forever. You're not going to win 200 races. At least, I wasn't. So I mean, you always hate to lose races, no matter how it happens. But no, I wasn't mad.
Hey, if you like that video, you'll love the entire podcast, the Dale Jr. Download. It's available on all major podcast platforms.